little wreck conversation, some deep reactions, please. All this comics narration ain't late to me. A little more talk, a lot less read. A little fight, baby, is what I need. Close the trade, open up your brains. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me.
Thank you, Vandello, and welcome once again to Rhett Conversations. My name is Josh Wasta, a.k.a. Fallout Fury. And with me, she don't eat meat, but she sure loves the bone. It's Leia Cameron.
I can think of about 3 things wrong with that sentence. Hi, everybody.
Yep. As I'm thinking, I'm like, no, none of this is right, but it's the only thing coming into my mind right now. Mary Moon of everything came from the very back of my mind and went, it's my time.
Josh is just really excited because with us today, our guest is composer Ryan Ike.
Hi.
Hi, Ryan.
Sorry. I didn't mean to leave a weird pregnant pause there. I just thought you were going to say more stuff about me, and I didn't want to get in the way.
I was going to let you talk about you, since you know you best. Ryan, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you do it?
Sure. So I sit hunched over a piano, like an electric piano keyboard, you know, like a Nosferatu figure kind of all day in front of a computer, trying to make music for match 3s and you know, things where you're trying to like make XP go up and, you know, just trying to you know, like I'm trying to make it not sound bad. That's really like my goal. That's kind of my.
I'm now curious which match 3s, because those are my jam.
I haven't actually done a match 3, but I would love that so much.
Well, but what Ryan isn't saying is that he's an exceptionally talented composer who has put together the soundtrack for a couple different video games. But my favorite, as I've told him endlessly, and I'm sure he's very tired of hearing, is for Where the Water Tastes Like Wine, which is an indie video game. And the music on it slaps so hard that I listen to it while I'm not playing the video game, which is a mark of quality in my eyes. So
high praise.
And I'm not tired of hearing that. It literally does make my day every single time, because I'm a broken human being who this engine runs on compliments, but also like you cannot find a musician or a composer or an artist of any kind who doesn't, even if they front like they do, like who doesn't love it. Anytime someone they like, it's always a surprise and a shock anytime someone's like, yeah, I listened to your work, you know, even though I have like the receipts that many people listen to my stuff, I'm still like, you do? Like every time it's incredible. So I really do appreciate it. I did a bad job earlier of describing myself. I've also worked on games like West of Loathing, which is like a comedy kind of stick figure art cowboy game. I've worked on a series called Reigns, which is like a mobile game where you make choices on how to run a kingdom, and I worked on the Game of Thrones, like the official Game of Thrones version of that, and other things. I won't list my whole discography and stuff, but but
you can find him on Spotify, and I suggest that you do.
Thank you so much.
With us also is the wonderful and lovely Jen Howland.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here. I'm so excited to meet Ryan, and I'm really looking forward to this episode.
Oh gosh, yeah, this episode is, I said before we started recording, and I'll say it again just for posterity, this has maybe been the first book that we've done where I have been incredibly grateful for the author's script at the back of the book, because there is so much going on in this book. There is a lot.
Why don't we tell the people what this book is?
Yes. That's probably really important. So today we are exploring Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth, written by Grant Morrison in the tender year of 1989, which was shocking to me, even though I've owned this book for quite some time. When I actually opened it up and looked at the year that it was collected and printed, I was like, say what?
Yeah. Well, and also important to know that the art in this book, which obviously cannot give description to your podcast, is done by Dave McKean, who well known all over the place, but probably best known for his work on Sandman. With Neil Gaiman.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the art in this. So Dave McKean is one of my favorite comic book artists. He did some of the work on Sandman. He's done other works with Neil Gaiman before. They did Violent Cases and Black Orchid, I believe, together.
Black Orchid.
And his art style, if you've never seen it before, is very surrealist and collage-esque. He incorporates a lot of mixed media and things like that. And it's very dreamlike, very, very suited, for something like The Sandman, of course, which is probably what he's best known for. But it works very well in this medium as well for this story because the story itself is fairly simple, but what's going on behind it is not. Grant Morrison is somewhat of a crazy person, and he really lets his freak flag fly in this book.
Well, and before we get into it, there is one more part that is a tradition. Ryan, you've never been on a graphically novel production. So if you could give us a little bit of background on your history of comic books, like how are they in your life and how are they growing up?
Sure. Yeah. So I have been a massive, especially superhero comics dork since I was conceived. Essentially, I was the only since I was a zygote.
I've me and a copy of The Death of Superman
inside my mom's womb. Exactly. I've been reading them. I will not. I'm. It's complicated because I've been reading them since I was a kid, but I'm not one of those people who has an encyclopedic knowledge of comic books specifically. I know a lot about superheroes and stuff, but there are plenty of even major arcs in certain comics that you can find that I haven't gotten to yet that I would happily read. They pass me by. I read a lot of Spider-Man. Spider-Man's my favorite superhero of all time. So that coming up, a lot of Ultimate Spider-Man, and even up until now, recently, finally got around to the Spider-Verse comic, which I lost my mind over.
Oh my god, it's so good.
It's so good. The fucking Victoria. Can I swear on this podcast?
Oh god,
yeah. Oh please.
Okay. This podcast has Leia on it.
Well,
yeah, we swear all the fucking time.
Excuse me.
Well, you're not a regular.
I know I'm not a regular, but if I goddamn can't fucking swear on this damn podcast,
this hell ass podcast.
This hell ass. Yeah, fagging jagobs. Yeah.
So lots of Spider-Man. I'm mostly a Marvel guy, and that's not a hard line where I think one is better than the other. That's just a lot of my favorite properties are in Marvel Town. I more recently have read. I've been reading Batgirl of Burnside, which I'm in love with. Have y'all dipped into that?
Which one's that?
I have not.
It's a Batgirl line where it's I don't think it's canon. It's an alt universe where she recovers from the Killing Joke somehow. She does therapy and her she's actually able to walk and move around again. And she's going to grad school in kind of the Brooklyn vibe of Gotham.
Yeah, that's a main line. That is actually what happened with Barbara Gordon.
That's canon, and she can just recover from having her spine severed. That's awesome.
But the idea was that there were people
what are you, lame?
There were people that could do it all along, and they approached her, and she was basically like, unless you make this available to everyone, I don't need special treatment.
I love Barbara so much. That's so good.
Yeah.
She's literally my favorite DC superhero because I love Batman a whole lot. But one of my favorite things about her is that her adventures are more so in Batgirl of Burnside, it's her fighting crime over there, and all of her villains tend to be kind of appropriate millennial themed kind of villains. She fights one who's a DJ, and she fights one who was it's two anime twins on motorcycles and shit. It's awesome and campy and fun. And I love that every now and then Batman shows up and he's like, how are you faring with the dark denizens of this neighborhood? And she's like, Bruce, fucking chill the fuck out. I got it. Yeah. She's not having his grimdark shit. It's so good. So that's one of my favorites currently. I've been reading a lot of Saga, a lot of the big name things I've dipped into, but if you got Sandman, I've obviously read, but if you got into more insular stuff, and then as far as Batman arcs, I loved The Long Halloween. Mm-hmm. I read The Killing Joke, of course. I read Year One, a lot of the big ones. But
sure,
I wouldn't be here if I'd read the thing you're going to talk to me about today.
Right.
I can't imagine, given Alan Moore's beard and the way he is, that it's going to be a sane production that is going to not get weird as absolute fun.
Well, this is Grant Morrison, not Alan Moore, but we have done.
Excuse me. I met Grant Morrison, but in my head, I was picturing Alan Moore because I'm always picturing Alan Moore because
I get it. Once you've seen him, It's kind of like The Ring.
Yeah.
He haunts you. We've done a whole series on our other show, Graphically Novel, where we call it More. Because every time
Tears in our eyes.
Yes, every time we think we're done with Alan Moore, there's another fucking property that pops up. But the other thing that I'll say about about Arkham Asylum today, reading it, I read it last night, and I immediately had to go over to my Xbox and start playing the Batman Arkham Asylum game.
Oh my God, they're
if
so
you
good.
have played that, it's very loosely based on this. There are
I have played those
notes that hit throughout that are very similar. Especially if you are completionist like I am, and you had to go and find all the goddamn hidden Amadeus Arkham files. Basically, they were like little rocks with a spider symbol on them, and then you collected all of them, and they were Amadeus Arkham story. Well, there's going to be a parallel.
That's cool.
That is
I did
cool.
do that. I don't
realize
remember
that.
it.
I've not played that game, so I knew it existed. Obviously, I knew it was loosely based on this book, but I didn't realize how much. So that's cool.
I picked it and Arkham City, and Arkham City is probably my favorite. It's so amazing.
It's the best one for sure.
Yeah. And Origins doesn't get enough love, but it was fantastic.
Origins is good. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. So for people who have not joined our show before, this is how it's going to go. Today, Professor L will be giving our lecture on Arkham Asylum, and she's going to explain to Ryan in intricate detail what happens in this comic. If Ryan has any question, can pull the emergency brake on the entire show, ask any question that he likes, and it'll be my responsibility to answer it. Now, if I can't answer it, I may ask Leia for help. If neither of us know it, since she's here, our safety net is Jen, who will just make up an answer.
And I'm so good at it.
Oh, yeah, especially when we're dealing with the Joker and we're doing...
Also, Jen, you should just know coming out the gate that I'm extremely gullible. So, like, whatever you say, I'm just going to fully
it's
fall
not,
for it.
Make it
canon. It's not to fool you. It's like...
I know it's not. I will still just believe you anyway.
Okay.
Is what I'm saying.
All right. Well, I just want you to know that we're friends.
Good. I'm even. I believe what my friends say even more readily. So this is perfect.
There
we go. Awesome. Well, if you ever need to get out of Seattle that has everything to do and go to a place that has nothing to do, you're welcome to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, anytime.
Y'all have 2 dogs.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's enough for me.
Awesome. Cool.
Absolutely.
You'll find me on the floor rolling around with them.
Video games. Yeah. No. Wrestling. We'll figure something out.
Oh yeah.
You would be surprised how much of the everything to do in Seattle that I don't do ever. So I don't think it matters.
I mostly just say that because Jen constantly will talk about how there was Chicago. And
there's plenty to do. It's just not things.
Right. You got a thing against cow tipping?
Yeah. You haven't lived until you've shot a bunch of empty cans off of a fence with a BB gun, Jen. Like, come on.
Yeah, we've upgraded. Well, I guess we are on the more liberal side of the state, so BB gun would be appropriate. Okay, so
all right,
Professor L, the floor is yours.
Okay, so as I stated a little bit at the beginning of this episode, this is a really bonkers story. Because there's a lot that's going on in the background. I do encourage anybody who listens to this and is interested in it or wants to know more, strongly suggest that you actually pick up a physical copy of it and look at it, because the art, as I mentioned, does make the story to some degree and informs a lot of what's going on. And again, Grant Morrison being kind of a crazy person, like this book has layers and layers and layers of like Jungian and Freudian theory, theoretical physics, metaphysics, tarot, mysticism, drugs, like you name it. He just threw it all into the pot and was like, here's my book.
And that seems to be a theme this season, because we just did Transmetropolitan last episode, and all of Derek Robertson's like background imagery, like we said, there is like 75% of the story. yeah
and this book, the edition that I used for this has the script in the back, which was extremely helpful to me while I was reading and writing up the notes that I took, because there's stuff that just doesn't make sense until you look at the script and you're like, oh, that's what's supposed to be happening. Okay. There's like in 5, 6, 7 paragraphs for one panel, type of stuff. So if it seems as if this walkthrough is a little chaotic, that's because the book is chaotic. So
100%.
so just hold on to your butts.
Yep.
So to begin Arkham Asylum, we open on a excerpt from Amadeus Arkham, and he is talking about the house that before it became the notorious asylum that it is now, was basically his whole world after his mother's death. He recalls the first experience that he had with what he calls a dark world as a child while tending to his mentally ill mother in 1901. In this particular instance, he was bringing her some food. She's bedridden. She's ill with a very nebulous illness. And so he's bringing her some food and trying to encourage her to eat. And his mother replies, "No, I've already eaten." And as she opens her mouth, a bunch of like beetles fall out of it. And so this is obviously very traumatic. This is where we get our very first instance, like right away on this first page, that she's mentally unwell. This is traumatic for young Amadeus, of course. And so he basically takes this trauma and kind of distances himself from it, as an adult, and tries to psychoanalyze it. And he's like, well, the beetle is a symbol of death and rebirth, and maybe she was just trying to protect herself from the darkness. And this is what kicks off this whole thing. So like, it's going to be like this for the entire book. So
yeah, I would describe this as a horror. At its base, like horror Batman.
Yeah, it really is
cool.
And there are notes too that Grant Morrison makes. It's basically like, we didn't want a lot of characters to look or feel the way that they have in previous books. Like they're supposed to be terrifying in here, and that's exactly what happened.
That's great.
So we flash forward to the present day, where Batman has been summoned by Commissioner Gordon, as per usual. And Gordon informs him that the inmates at Arkham Asylum have seized control of the building, and they're holding the staff hostage and making a bunch of bonkers demands. But their most important and final request is to speak directly to Batman in person. A phone is presented to him, and the Joker is on the line because, of course, he is.
Of course, he is.
It's also important to note here that there's a calendar in this panel. It's April 1st. It's April Fool's Day. This is going to be a recurring theme throughout this book. Joker wants Batman to join them in the madhouse where he belongs, quote unquote, and tells him that he's going to gouge out the eyes of a 19-year-old staff member named Pearl with a pencil that she'd been using to draw, because she's somewhat of an artist, I guess, on the side. Over the phone, Batman then hears her screaming as she's stabbed in the eye. He, of course, is appalled and angry, and decides that the only recourse he has at this point now is to do exactly what the Joker asks of him and to go to the asylum. Batman also lets Commissioner Gordon know that he's a little bit afraid that the Joker might be right, that sometimes he feels he behaves irrationally, and once that he enters the asylum, he'll feel like he belongs there. This is not subtle.
Think, Bruce?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Can I
we've all known this for a while.
Batman is one of those characters where like every superhero is like this, and I'm aware they're all absurd and I love them so much, but like the second you step away from his whole thing, and I love Batman so much, this is not an indictment, it's immediately apparent that he's out of his mind, right? Like,
like
one of my favorite one of my favorite things about Batman is that he's like, I'm gonna be the dark avenger this city deserves. The only way to fight the fear plaguing the citizens of Gotham is to become fear itself. And then one of the first things he did was make a bunch of boomerangs that looked like bats. Like, that'll really freak out those squares. Like,
right?
Papers.
I love when people make fun of Captain Boomerang, and I say, which one?
Which one? There's 17
or
of them.
Batman. Because that is
also,
core.
I'm sorry, but he really is. Since I dragged this to a halt for no reason other than to yell about batarangs, have any of you ever wondered about how those fucking things work? Because sometimes he throws them and they embed themselves in concrete, and other times he throws them and it like passively knocks somebody out. And I'm like, are they sharp or aren't they?
Right.
Or do
And
you
like
have
if-
different sets? And if not, why not make them different shapes, dog? Because what if you grab the wrong
Right.
one and you like behead somebody? Like,
right. I mean, as somebody who's, studied anatomy and physiology and whatnot, like if you can embed an object into concrete very easily, you're definitely going to go through their body with it, right? Like if you hit a person with the same amount of force and the same object, they're just gonna freaking explode. Like
I feel like it's kind of like going back to the Batman Arkham Asylum game, because in that you have batarangs that are specifically for cutting things. You have a remote control batarang. You have a batarang for like knocking a dude out. Like, so I mean, I kind of go by that theory that he has to hit right on the D-pad in order to choose the right one. And I mean, if he hits that button once too quickly and just assumes that it's good to go, yeah, he's going to kill someone.
I've
or
just
explode
exposed.
them. Or
yeah, or hit himself in the face with one of the reversible ones. Like, fuck.
right. Right now we're watching Hawkeye and just got to the episode where there are trick arrows. So yeah, I mean, if you don't know which arrow you're using,
you just gotta be mad careful, I guess, with that utility belt. Like,
exactly. Yeah. So
could be shark repellent spray, could be pepper spray. Who knows?
Who knows? It's a mystery till you open it up. So we flash. So we're going to be interspersing. Basically, the way this is written is it flashes forward and back, and we go backwards from to Amadeus Arkham's journal and experiences to the present day where Batman is in the asylum. So we're flashing back over to Amadeus's journal, where he reveals that his mother died in 1920. So that's 19 years after he had this weird experience with his mom eating beetles. So his mom died in 1920 after slitting her own throat with a pearl-handled razor. He inherits the house, and this is when he first kind of starts to make plans to turn it into the asylum. At the time, he's working for the state psychiatric hospital in Metropolis, and a patient named Martin Mad Dog Hawkins is referred to him. Hawkins, amongst other things, was also an abuse victim who later became a killer that mutilates his victims' faces and genitalia. And he claims that the Virgin Mary told him to do this to stop the spread of disease. Arkham comes to believe that men like Hawkins are only guilty of the crime of being mentally ill, and they're trapped in the penal system without any treatment or hope of recovery. That night, he has a nightmare that is extremely psychosexual, involving the quote-unquote tunnel of love, and the imagery is exactly pretty much what you'd expect. And he dreams that people from the other side of the mirror arch. He's very, at this point, even at this early stage, already starting to follow down the footsteps of his deceased mother. He's starting to lose it. Back in the present day, Batman has arrived at Arkham, and he is greeted by the Joker and the aforementioned Pearl that he had been holding hostage. Pearl is revealed to actually be just fine. Her eyes are intact. Everything about her is intact.
Oh, good.
And Batman, of course, is like, what the fuck? And Joker screams, April Fool, because he's funny.
Well, that's his whole thing. I get it now, like the whole clown getup.
Exactly.
That's why he does
Yes.
that.
I'm about to break,
Finally
I'm
makes
about
sense.
to break your mind, Ryan. That's why they call him the Joker.
Oh, because of the okay.
Because the jokes.
Give me a second. I gotta write this down. That's why the condiment king has mustard and ketchup and shit. I get it now.
By the way,
yeah.
Kite Man, because he's wearing a big kite. Oh, let's see how many obscure ass villains.
Yeah, jeez, Calendar Man.
I love Calendar Man. Can I ask actually quickly what because I can't see it. I'm literally, I've got it in my Amazon cart. I'm gonna fucking buy this as soon as the show's over when I can legally read it. What is Batman's costume like in this era? Does he have like the yellow and black emblem, or is it like the?
So you don't see Batman at this point. All you're seeing is like shadows that are you familiar?
Dave.
Yeah, very Dave McKean, like shadowy figures. So you're not seeing his face. You're not seeing anything other than the cowl and the cape, like in various.
Right.
It's
That's
kind of
cool.
like, are you familiar at all with the Darkness? It's a Top Cow thing in the Witchblade universe.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
there was a game two games based on it, but
that's
like
how I know it.
in that, when he envelops himself all in shadow, like you can't make out anything other than it's a black. It's like a Rorschach blot.
I'm picturing kind of like on the animated series when they do this, and you saw like the outline of him and just like the eye, like the white eye holes, but not.
Yeah, it's very similar to that.
The cape also kind of forms shadowy tendrils that the cape wouldn't actually make. So like there are tendrils coming off of it. And the thing is, the ears are always like a foot high and very thin.
Ooh.
So there's like almost like horns.
It's done that way very specifically. Like it does note in the script part that it's done that way basically because this is a Batman story, but it's not really about Batman. Right. And so he's kind of this ambiguous, dark, cloaked, creepy figure because everybody else is like, this is a very dark book, like in both the art and the storytelling. And the art informs that part of the story for sure. Like he's just this amorphous black blob who's got the bare outline of being Batman. Like you recognize that's Batman, but you don't see Bruce or any like facial features. It's just cool. Dark bat. So he releases Pearl and to go free and welcomes Batman inside the asylum. As he does, he also grabs Batman's ass and tells him, "Loosen up, tight ass." And I feel like this is the first comic I can think of that really leans into that whole Joker has a boner for Batman and Batman is looking horny for Joker idea. I cannot think of another time I've read a comic that was this explicit about that, because there are a couple times during the course of the story where Joker, like, I don't know if hitting on is the right word, but is like aggressively sexual towards Batman. And so like, what's that?
1989, folks.
Yeah. There's a lot going on. I know I'm going to keep saying that over and over again, but just trust me. So this kind of makes that a little bit explicit. Like he legitimately gropes Batman's ass, which is a choice. So the lunatics are running the asylum now, and the art on this 2-panel spread is just absolutely cuckoo. It is chaos inside this asylum. It's hard to describe these panels. Again, you kind of have to see for yourself, but like it is exactly what you would expect when you hear the phrase "the lunatics are running the asylum." There's voices clamoring everywhere. There's it just looks like visual madness.
Is it D20 inside of a mouth for some reason?
Yeah. There's all kinds of shit happening. We meet Dr. Cavendish, who has been given a red clown nose and a little bit of clown face paint. And he begs Joker to stop this madness, which is probably a poor choice of words for him, but a deliberate one on Morrison's part.
Pretty insensitive for a psychiatric professional to use that term, but
exactly. Joker, of course, declines to stop this madness. And Batman notices there are a couple non-inmates that are still here, despite Joker's promise that he'd release all the hostages once Batman showed up. This is when we find out that a couple of administrators and employees decided to stay behind in order to continue on with their duty. One of them is named Ruth Adams, and she's a psychotherapist, and then the aforementioned Dr. Cavendish, who is, a doctor.
There's no amount of money on fucking planet Earth that would make me be like, well, I'm a professional and I'm going to keep organizing this file cabinet while this Scarecrow fills the fucking place with fear gas. Like, absolutely not. What's the matter with you?
I just had this visual of you like in this little like office room, just kind of hunched over a keyboard, sort of hesitantly tapping on a couple notes, like I'm
filling out a Google spreadsheet. And I just got a couple more of these to get done, and then my inbox is at 0. I've never had it there before. Yeah.
Oh man, like that is a joke that goes to everyone that's ever had a job.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what they're getting paid, but it's not enough.
No amount of money. Also, I think this is, this theme of like the asylum getting overrun by the villains, has happened in a bunch of things, and obviously the games that this comic is, or that are based on this comic, do that very well. The first one, but I don't think it occurred to me until like right now, kind of in this horror context, how fucking scary that would actually be. If you were in that situation,
right.
you know?
And it's
like the Batman has like some of the best villains, and they're horrifying.
This book actually does a really good job of making it scary. Like some of these villains that kind of seem kind of goofy, and we'll get to this later, but some of the villains that seem kind of goofy are actually rendered in a much more terrifying context down the line. But we'll get to that.
Right. Well, and the other thing, since we're on a pause from the story, is I wanted to talk for a second about Ruth Adams, the psychotherapist, because the way that she is portrayed is like ice cold. Like she's lighting a cigarette while she's explaining to Batman that they insisted on staying and introducing herself. Like she is like cool as a cucumber, lighting a cigarette. Meanwhile, like Cavendish is like, wah!
yeah. So she is cold as hell. So it's at this point in the story that Joker notices that Harvey Dent, otherwise known as Two-Face, has gone to the bathroom on the floor while hiding underneath a table. Two-Face very timidly explains that he couldn't decide what to do because there are too many options. And Batman is like, what in the actual fuck is going on here? This is when Ruth steps in, and Ruth explains that as part of his cure, they took his coin away. You know, his he's got the coin that's scarred on one side and normal on the other. Well, they took his coin away and got him to use a D6 so that he would have 6 decision options. And then they gradually moved him to tarot cards. And this is also where I should point out too, tarot imagery features very heavily throughout this book.
Yep.
Cool.
So they moved him to tarot cards, and then they plan on eventually porting him over to using like the I Ching. So that he would get used to making more and more decisions.
I can't wait till Two-Face rebrands himself as the randomizer and just still terrorizes Gotham City, but he's like, the possibilities for chaos are endless.
Well, right, and like on the face of it, this actually does sound like a really smart and cool way to get him off of the fucking coin, right, and then to like help him. But Batman points out,
I'm sure there's already a DC villain named the Randomizer that like gains sentience after being an MIRC dice bot or something.
So Batman points out, rightly so, that Ruth either fails to recognize or deliberately refuses to recognize that this treatment process has completely broken Harvey mentally to the point where he can no longer make very basic decisions for himself, like going to the bathroom when he has to piss.
Oh, boo-hoo. Welcome to fucking being an adult, Harvey. Like,
do I piss myself? Do I go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Do I piss
you and everyone, my dog?
Places? Right.
If you can't handle whether or not you need to pee, wait until you have to decide whether or not you can fart right now and what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
be in an elevator with somebody you respect, Harvey, and see how that treats you.
Right. So Ruth very glibly informs Batman that sometimes you have to break somebody down to completely to rebuild them. And it's very clear that Arkham Asylum is not a place of compassionate care for the mentally ill.
No.
So she also tells him that most of the doctors feel that the Joker is beyond treatment and that he may not even be insane, that he might be quote unquote super sane. Whatever the fuck that even means. That basically like that he may not have control over all the sensory information he receives from the outside world, and he copes by being just as chaotic as all that feels. Recreating himself as a new person every day and has no real personality. He is just this chaos. Which is cool.
Actually, I came back around on super sanity real fast. I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And then when you explained it, I was like, that's fucking like he's on such a level of being able to hear and see and feel and process the world beyond anything we can scope that he can't deal with all this shit he's taking in.
Exactly.
Wow, that's really good.
Cool, right? Like I was like, all right, sick. I can get behind that. That's a nice take that I've never heard before on the Joker, and I normally, full disclosure, can't fucking stand the Joker. Can't fucking stand this character.
Can I ask about that? Like what bugs you about him? Which is completely valid, of course, but
no, totally. Mainly because the character has been co-opted outside of the comic books to very specific types of people that really just idolize him and think that he is the bee's knees, and that's not okay.
like all the people when the recent solo Joker movie came out, and they're like, man, I identify with that,
Right.
like a lot, like I just want to emulate that, like
Right.
like a lot, like it's like, could you, hey, step back. He's dressed like a clown and he's dancing on stairs outside, like
Right.
maybe
Like, talk to somebody, bro.
Yeah. There are resources. Please seek them out.
Please avail yourself of some help.
Exactly. And that's basically why I don't much care for the character. It's not that the character itself in my comics is bad. It's that outside, like the symbolism of quote unquote the Joker, TM,
what it's become in real
Right.
life.
It's the same way.
I can see that.
For context, it's the same way that I feel, and I think a lot of people feel about the Punisher.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. I actually used to
Yeah.
like the Punisher quite a
Yes.
bit, and through no fault of some Punisher comics, some are trash, but I've read some actual
Sure.
really good ones, and I actually think the Netflix show is extremely good.
Mhm.
Yeah,
roast me
for
if
sure.
you want.
No, it's good. It's
Not
good.
at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the Netflix show quite a bit, and it's just like, God fucking damn it, like it makes it just unsavory, and it's not the material's fault, but I'm just like so grossed out by the way it's been
Right.
co-opted by
Right.
monsters and assholes and shit.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I feel about the Joker as well. So that's
Right.
that's the deal here.
And while we're talking about things that piss us off, it is appropriate because at one point the doctor says that the Joker's latest claim is that he's possessed by Baron Gid, Ghee, the voodoo Loa.
Gede.
Yeah. Gede is a family of Loa. The Baron that she refers to is either Samedi or Papa Legba. There is no Baron Gede. It's a whole family.
I feel like Grant Morrison should have known this, and I'm a little disappointed that
Right?
that was in there. I feel like that of all people, this is the person. Maybe him and Alan Moore should know what that means.
Right. Right.
Well, I'd also like to point out that in this panel, and Ryan, you will see when you read this book, the doctor, Ruth, the doctor, there's a close up of her face, and it almost looks like she has clown makeup on.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of that in this book, and I'm not able to describe every single panel.
Right.
For the
Yeah,
purposes of this
please
podcast,
don't.
but like it is again, can't stress it enough, worth checking out the art in this book.
Yes.
It is incredible. So anyways, so Joker pops back in as she's shuffling through a deck of Rorschach cards and shows one of Batman. He tells Batman that he sees basically a bunch of chaotic bullshit in it. He's like, oh, I see, this, that, and the other thing. Not really important. It's just Joker being Joker. And then asks what Batman sees. And there's really no real surprise here. Batman sees a bat.
Batman
But-
sees bats in like his fucking alphabet soup and shit.
But this,
though. Like,
Right.
this bat, for emphasis, is literally, it is a full page panel. There's nothing else on the panel. And it is an extremely realistic drawing of a bat in flight. It's actually very pretty.
that's cool.
But it's scary kind of too, because it kind of pops out of nowhere. Batman, of course, then tells Joker, I don't see anything, and basically Joker taunts him by implying that Batman is sexually attracted to Robin, which again is a thing going back all the way to the real-life establishment of the Comics Code Authority, the seduction of the innocent BS, in 1954. That this has always been a thing that people have been like, maybe he wants to bone that teen. Joker forces Ruth to administer a free association word test to Batman, and one like a Rorschach test doesn't go super well. Of course, it's all about his parents' death, which Joker finds incredibly amusing. Back to the Journals of Amadeus. At this point, when we come upon Amadeus's journal again, he's now actively turning his childhood home into the asylum. His daughter is having nightmares, and weirdly, he finds a playing card on the ground that happens to be the Joker. I'm sure this is perfectly normal. It's not clear in the text or even in the script what this is. I mean, it's obviously supposed to signify like the Joker TM, but like why it's there way ahead of time. Again, this is like where the quantum physics part comes in. Like, was the Joker there all along? Is the Joker part of the asylum? I don't know.
Can I stop the podcast
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
pulley and ask, like, it's not a question that maybe has an actual comics answer, but what do you all think is the deal with that? Unless it's
So
something that gets found out later in the comic, in which case I'm just spoiling. But like,
So for me, where I'm at, because I do know from reading the script that this is supposed to have like some quantum entanglement crap or whatever, which I love that kind of shit. I do feel like it's a signifier that this place is kind of a madness vortex, if you will. Like it's always gonna have this like really bonkers energy to it. The Joker is part of it. He's always been a part of it. He will always be a part of it. The other inmates as well. Like their madness is kind of contained in this asylum for all time. And that's maybe a deeper an answer than I meant to give, but like that's kind of what I pull from it. I don't know.
That's
cool.
That's where I am too. There are several other things that will that refer to the larger Batman Rogues Gallery. Because right before he finds the Joker, he's talking about how his daughter, since she had nightmares, he blames her reading a bunch of Lewis Carroll, which obviously there are several Rogues Gallery characters, the Mad Hatter probably being the most well known out of them that come directly from Lewis Carroll. So it's pulling this, it's making you question whether or not all of the things that have happened in this house, if the house itself has some sort of supernatural power or ability, and very much giving the history of Arkham Asylum. So at the end of the day, the story is not about any of the things that are happening. It's about the house itself.
Yeah. It's the story is wild.
Yeah. It's kind of like House on Haunted Hill, the comic. Like
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I like that a lot. That somehow never occurred to me, as much as I love all the kind of cosmology of Arkham Asylum and Batman stuff, that like the asylum itself could be a factor. Yeah. It's like, I think of it as cursed because all the fucking worst people in the world live there all the time until they break out 78 times a year. And it never occurred to me, like, this place is like, even if it didn't originate that way, like if you believe in that kind of thing, like just having this much weird, chaotic, evil energy in it all the time, like soaking that shit up, would maybe imprint on a place.
Yeah, exactly. And that's 100% like where, like I said, where I think the quantum physics part that Grant Morrison talks about comes in, is that it's an entity into of itself, like
out, like almost stuck out of time, because hints of what will come show up in the past, and hints of the past show up modern day, and then God knows what's happening in the future. It's definitely that feeling of like unstuck in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and the art does a great way. It does a great job of kind of conveying that. I hate to harp on the art so much, but really, like Dave McKean is a great artist.
It's so good.
He also talks about how Amadeus Arkham also talks about how in 1920 he goes to Europe and meets Jung. Of Jungian theory, and he also meets Aleister Crowley, who discusses Egyptian tarot with him and beats him at chess. So he's learning, it's kind of illustrating that he's learning, psychoanalytic theory, but now he's getting into like some mysticism shit. And when he returns back to the States, the progress of the asylum is well underway, and his wife gives him a clownfish for his aquarium. There's a bit here about clownfish. So if the dominant female in a school of clownfish dies, a male can change its sex and assume her vacated position. And this again is not subtle. Amadeus obviously has some serious mommy issues that come into play, both here and will also come into play later.
Also, it could have been a much different ending of Finding.
Also, the Joker being a clown and a clownfish, like there's an illusion here. There's a lot of weird psychosexual stuff going on with the Joker in this entire book, and like,
which I kind of like, because I don't think about, like, I wonder who the Joker fucks all the time.
Right.
It's not a thing that occurs to me, but like he's such this complete agent of chaos that like I don't ever think of him as having a sexuality at all, and not in the way that like not like, I don't mean like Ace, I mean like literally just nothing. And it's just
chaos.
Yeah. I mean, well, in this book, his alignment, I would arguably say in this particular book, the Joker's alignment is chaotically horny.
Yes.
Like he appears to be
Got my next tattoo idea. Thanks.
he appears to be basically pansexual and like aggressively pansexual and also somewhat genderless.
Which would fit with the clownfish thing, right?
Right.
Kind
and
of.
that's why I included even talking about, because it's a very brief aside in the panels, but it does have some symbology there. So and like I said, some of that stuff will come into play later. So Arkham gets a call telling him that Martin Mad Dog Hawkins, the guy that he had treated previously, has escaped the penitentiary. He tells whoever is on the other line that this dude is violent and dangerous, but he really can't do anything more than that, and actually goes out as far as to say it's not my problem. So the compassion that he had originally had for this guy is kind of gone at this point. Like, he went from being like, oh, it's so sad that this clearly mentally ill person is just getting incarcerated and not getting help, to now, oh, he's escaped. Well, it's not really my problem. Yeah, he's kind of, he's kind of violent. Like, look out, good luck out there. Bye, click,
Best wishes to you.
Right.
Thoughts and prayers.
So, right, exactly. So we go back to Batman in the present day, and Joker suggests a game of hide and seek for Batman to play with the other inmates, who are basically all the villains that he's put away there over the years, up to and including, but not limited to, Scarecrow, Dr. Destiny, Killer Croc, the whole shebang. Batman originally, initially is like, I'm not going to play your game. But the Joker randomly just kills a guard and then tells Batman that there's no escape from this asylum, and he has to run. He has an hour before everybody starts looking for him. Batman does. There is a very strange scene as he is running where he basically has, the only way I can describe this is a PTSD flashback to his parents being killed. And this causes Batman to punch through a mirror and stab himself in the hand with some of the broken glass from the mirror before he even really realizes what he's doing. It startles Batman and it startles the reader both. It is our first indication that maybe Batman isn't as fearless as he has let on. The inmates, meanwhile, are already getting restless. Joker then says, hey, let's just pretend it's been an hour, and the game is on. So everybody's now looking for Batman. We cut back to Amadeus Arkham, and now it's 1921, April 1st to be exact, April 1st, 1921. He comes home from work to find his wife and daughter murdered and brutally, gruesomely mutilated. His daughter in particular has been beheaded. Her head has been placed in her dollhouse, and the words "Mad Dog" have been carved into her torso. And this is where Amadeus continues his descent into madness himself. His response to this is to put on his mother's wedding dress and wander around the house. So, a perfectly normal reaction.
Just out here having a normal one.
Yeah.
Amadeus.
Just kicking it. Just, wearing your mom's wedding dress.
Can I pull the stop button again?
Yes.
You don't pull buttons. Sorry, I did that wrong.
Well, I broke
it.
You can pull.
Hey Josh, real quick, name one button. You can do that too. Just go ahead and just name it. Just describe it right
brake on an elevator.
Yep, emergency brake on.
But that's not a
It is a
button.
Right? It is a button, because if you could push it, people would lean on it. You pull it to stop the elevator and press it to start the elevator.
Ah, okay.
Sorry.
Right.
I'm
No.
pedantic that way.
Don't be sorry. I asked to be made a fool of, and you've achieved it. Beautiful.
All in the effort to save face for you.
Yeah.
In the first place.
This thing is really double twisting back on itself, huh? I forgot why I pulled the extremely specific stop button for the podcast now. Oh, I wanted to ask if the art differs at all in any notable way between the modern day scenes and the Amadeus scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are a lot more vibrant reds, a lot more because obviously when he walks in and he's dealing with his wife and child being murdered, especially in this scene, there is red everywhere, and it looks like congealing between panels. Yeah. There's a whole section where it looks like there is blood-soaked white lace. The imagery, like, to go past that, the imagery, it's impossible to describe. It is so, you are locked into this world. And when Leia said he's horrified and the reader is horrified, it's very accurate because it's him coming home, and usually, at that point in the flashbacks, it's a little darker. There's like stained glass usually in the background, but everything is in this series of like little color, but mostly grays and blacks. Once he witnesses all the murders, everything in the background is red with these panels that come down where you like see his daughter's decapitated head looking through the window of a dollhouse. Yeah. It is
good night.
Nuts. But usually the flashbacks are, you can tell you're in a flashback. Because, and I can't even really describe it, it's different grays, blacks, and whites than the rest of the comic has a bunch of grays, blacks.
Okay.
And the word bubbles, like Arkham in this has a very specific tone, and I think he also has a very specific font.
The lettering for him is different, because it's more handwritten looking.
Right, and it subtly clues you in that you're now in the past.
Yeah.
Okay, that's neat.
So, so where were we? I've lost it. Oh, there we go. Okay, so
he's Miss Havishamming.
Yes, he's Miss Havishamming around the house, and that's where we leave him as we flash forward back to Batman. Batman encounters as he's wandering through this asylum, kind of low-key panicked. He encounters Clayface. Now, the Clayface that we see here is notably different than what we've seen in previous Batman comics. This one is sickly looking and skinny.
Looks like a goblin.
Looks like, he looks very diseased. In fact, at one point he says, "My skin is sick." I did not understand who, like, this character was so unrecognizable that I actually did consult the script for this, because I was like, who the fuck is this supposed to be? This actually, it says directly in the notes, alert readers will perceive him as aids on two legs and realizes that he represents the fear of what lies beyond the curtain in the tunnel of love. If we take all the encounters of the villains as corresponding to various psychological states, then this one is Batman's fear of sexuality is something intrinsically unclean.
Wow.
That is a lot. Yeah. Like, it is, he's
remember,
just
kids,
really
if
gross.
you go in the vagina, you're gonna find AIDS.
Yeah, and like
Yep.
That's why I pointed out the tunnel of love panel, because I didn't get graphic in describing it, but it is clearly
A vagina. Yeah.
a vagina.
It has hair.
It's red, like a reddish pink. It's there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of weird psychosexual stuff going on here, and this is definitely one of them. So this is kind of a, Clayface is meant to be sort of a metaphor for like STDs, AIDS, that kind of thing.
I'm pulling the stop button again. I'm just gonna keep calling it the button now that I've been proven that there are examples of buttons you can pull. Fuck it. I feel like I'm supposed to be asking on this podcast questions that are actually have canonical comics answers.
It's not really,
but instead I'm just getting all like conceptual with it. Have any of you all ever perceived Batman, before or outside of this comic, as having a fear of sexuality? Like, he's afraid of a lot of shit. I think it's very clear. You don't dress up like a fucking bat and theme all your shit like a bat and run around the city beating up
he
people.
Has a fear of commitment for valid reasons.
And there was that whole not too long ago about how Batman doesn't eat pussy. So like,
forgot about that. It's only one kind of cave he likes hanging out inside.
I was about to say, you don't date Selena Kyle and not drop the bat ears. I'm just saying.
Yo, for real though, like. She wouldn't stick around for somebody who doesn't fucking eat out. Like,
no.
And good on her for that.
And good for her for having standards. Exactly.
Yeah. So
always confusing your pistols with private.
So Batman is actually startled by Clayface. He's just shambling around all gross, and he's like, "Batman, help me! You can help me, Batman. I just want to share my disease." And he reaches out towards Batman, and Batman is pretty much screams, "Don't touch me." And as he's getting closer, basically Batman sort of half pushes past him, half
ninja kicks his leg.
Like basically like
take that gonorrhea.
Yeah, they're like in a corridor, and he's trying to both get past him and like not like, so he kicks at him and it breaks his leg.
Oh God.
And so Batman tries to escape from him, and runs down this corridor, clearly afraid now, very clearly afraid, which is again a departure from Batman that we've seen in known previous to this, right? Like he's actually afraid of these people. He happens to come across Dr. Destiny's wheelchair, and he is calling for Clayface, and Clayface obviously he's been ninja kicked and can't walk, but he's calling out for Clayface because he wants Clayface to push him around in his wheelchair. And as he turns his head, as he sees, and you can't really see very well in the panel because it's just a big shadow, but basically Batman's foot kicks the back of his chair and sends him like careening down a flight of stairs, where he is tipped out of the chair, and is just, next panel is just him just lying motionless at the bottom of the stairs. And Batman is at the top of the stairs, just kind of in silhouette, looking down emotion.
Still adhering to Batman's famous no-kill policy, I see.
Right.
Like,
yeah, he's just murking people left and right here. He's done. Like he's 100% done. And as he's again, like kind of, so he continues on his path and sees the Scarecrow just kind of shambling along, and kind of ducks into a cell to hide from him. And this cell actually has the Mad Hatter in it, and he is smoking a hookah. Batman legitimately does not know how to react to this. This series of panels as well is also pretty much what you would expect in terms of like, you think of the Mad Hatter, you think of Alice in Wonderland, you think of like, in the script it deliberately evokes Jefferson. It says, right, imagine now that you can hear Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit begin to play and continue throughout this scene, and that's exactly what it looks like. And Mad Hatter is clearly on drugs, or essentially so crazy that he might as well be on drugs.
Extremely common item to find in any house of psychiatric care.
Oh yeah,
a hookah.
Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't have one?
This is also way super more disturbing if you understand, like, the man.
Yeah.
Holy, because there's a lot of implications of I want to fuck with.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He's talking to Batman in this scene, and like, it's not, the conversation is not particularly savory. He's talking, of course, about how this house does things to people. It fucks with your head. But as he's talking, he's fondling this headless doll of a little girl, and he's pulling up its dress, and he's talking about how children interest him, and each child is order out of chaos, or is it the other way around? To know them is to know myself, but little girls especially. Batman just does not know how to fucking deal with this at all. He is just staring at him while the Mad Hatter is talking, and is like, there's no violence, there's no anything. He's just kind of like, what the fuck?
Well, I think if I may, one thing that's kind of hitting me that I think is really cool and interesting about this scenario of this comic is that Batman's end game for every villain he has is stuff them in Arkham Asylum.
Right.
So now he's in a situation where like they're already here. Like he's got to kind of solve the fact that they're running around controlling place. But like, if he's just in his, like, what do you do at this point? He's never had any solution past this.
Right.
And so I think it's interesting to see him in this situation where it's like, Bruce, you haven't fucking thought this out. Like, now, what do you do now? Like, you're not solving the issue that causes these people to exist, which is kind of you. Let's be real. In a lot of ways, you're just, it's interesting to see him like not have a next step, because Batman always has a next step, and now it's like, what do you do?
He's the world's greatest detective. I mean, shit.
The other part of this scene in particular is that it's not obvious in the beginning, but it is that the Mad Hatter is in a cell behind glass. And
Yes.
so,
Oh, wait, hang on. I think I
Yeah.
know what you're getting to, and
Sure.
I'm gonna get to that right now.
do it.
So talks about how sometimes the Mad Hatter is talking about how sometimes I think the asylum is a head that dreams us all into being. Perhaps it's your head, Batman. And as Batman walks towards him, he says, Arkham is a looking glass and we are you. And Batman reaches out and it's just a mirror. He's looking at himself. It's his own reflection. There's nothing there. It's
Shit.
just
Like
him.
it's drawn in such a way where the glass the Mad Hatter was actually really behind is reflecting, or it's like
He's now
Yeah.
reflecting back.
It's now reflecting
okay,
back. Okay. So yeah, fucked up.
that's really good though.
Yeah.
Do not read this on drugs.
No.
That's really good because
No.
like I know it's not a new theory, but like I've really liked the idea. It's not like my headcanon thing, but like definitely I like the playing with the idea that Batman is out of his mind, like literally, and all these people like are just in his head. They're just personifications of things he can fight and deal with because he can't handle or process his grief.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
so I like the idea that there's a read of this where the Mad Hatter really wasn't in there ever or existed in any way, and this is just kind of highlighting that.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's this book also leaves a lot of stuff kind of open to the reader's interpretation as well. So like this could definitely be interpreted in a number of different ways. Like, yeah, like you said, like is it just a manifestation of his mental illness? Is this an actual villain? Is it a combination of the former and the latter? Like it's who knows? I don't know. It's creepy.
Well, and it's been done both in the comics and in other media. The idea that Bruce is actually in a self-delusion this entire time in a catatonic state, thinking up this other stuff because of the trauma of its death. Kind of it was done much better in a Buffy episode, but same kind of theory.
Yeah, I dig that a lot. It's very very haunting
Yeah.
to think of that being the case.
Yeah, 100%. So at this point now we flash back again to 1921, and despite everything, the Elizabeth Arkham Asylum for the Criminally Insane opens in November 1921. One of Arkham's first patients is the aforementioned Mad Dog. Arkham treats him for 6 months before, on the anniversary of his wife and child's death on April 1st, he quote unquote accidentally gives him too much electroshock and basically just electrocutes him to death. He notes that it was treated as if it were an accident. These things happen. But he does remark in his journal that even though this man who killed his wife and child brutally is dead, he doesn't really feel any.
I'm pulling the stop button again.
Yeah.
Yep.
Leia, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
This is brutal and awful, and I don't mean to take away from the scene itself, but I'm actually like literally trying to think of it now. Can any of you name one fucking time that Arkham Asylum successfully rehabilitated anybody?
No, I cannot. I don't
No.
think it's a place of rehabilitation.
No.
Because they are.
I mean, there are examples of think they're real.
Yeah, but it's always takesies backsies with that shit.
Right.
Like every time. Yeah, like I just realized like that the whole point of it is supposed to be that like you treat these people so they get less insane.
Right.
And I would imagine eventually, serve their time. And if they are pronounced sane and renounce their crazy, freeze ray or whatever the fuck, that they can
Right.
go just live a semi-normal life in the worst city in the world. But it's never happened one time. I can't think of a single character who has actually
Trying
successfully.
to think of who the villain was who thought.
Maxie Zeus.
Yes, he was
Yes.
cured for a while until Joker uncured him. So I mean,
cured him.
like, some of those things is like, yes, it's successful, except there's a bunch of other people that's like, that's not okay. You can't be cured. So they'll grab them and torture them back into insanity.
Yeah.
Again.
I know it's comic books, and I know like I understand.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be one of those nitpicky nerds who like I get it, but we can all agree like Arkham Asylum is like one of the most unsuccessful institutions like in the fucking like fictional world, right? Like Gotham City as a the the city council would have stepped in forever ago and been like, we got to shut this place down and burn this island to the ground. Like it's not doing anything.
I feel
You
like
can't do
Arkham
anything right.
Asylum is not sending us their best people.
Right.
I'm starting to think.
as the I will provide an answer that is not correct. I think that Arkham views Arkham Asylum as a jail. However, it provides so many people.
Right. It's privately
It's a
owned.
job creator.
It's privately owned
Job
prison.
creator.
Yeah. If they cured everyone, they would be out of a job.
Well,
Yes.
also,
Exactly.
yeah. Well, that and they know that no one is ever really actually get cured, but hey, maybe this is where some very famous psychological practices and education institutions say, hey, I know what will make you an excellent psychologist. Go work here.
Right. You will either become an excellent psychologist or another Harley Quinn.
Or die.
Yeah,
or
or
die
die.
horribly. Like, listen, I get it. The Riddler does escape every month and fill a hospital full of question mark bombs, but think of the economy if we shut this place
Right.
down.
Right.
Exactly.
Think of all of the construction workers in Gotham that get to build a new hospital.
Yeah, Gotham definitely has more construction cranes than Seattle, like
Oh,
times
yeah.
1,000.
This is
Well, that's the thing,
Arkham
is
Asylum
that's
really is important to the infrastructure of Gotham City.
Well, that's the thing is like, I'm sure that like the Penguin and a bunch of the more fiscally minded criminals are behind all of the construction companies because they're like, okay, well, even if we get put in Arkham, when we escape, we'll have more money because we keep blowing up buildings. It's like it's a Cerberus eating its own tail.
The world's
Not a
greatest
Cerberus,
detective
but
has never put
Cerberus.
together Cobblespot Construction Company might be linked to the Penguin.
Well,
Right.
I mean, the Penguin is smart enough to put it behind a couple
Oh, no,
of
for
shell
sure.
companies.
I just like the
but-
idea of him putting his name like right on the cranes
Right.
and
Right.
shit.
Yeah. But at the end of that, all of that, yes, he is actually the CEO of Penguin House Publishing.
Oh my God. Go home.
I am home. Well, this
Anyways,
has been the last episode of Rec Conversations, everyone.
that was so bad. I'm sorry. So Arkham just straight up electrocutes this guy that killed his wife and kids, but like the vengeance that he gets by doing so just very much does not bring him any particular fulfillment. He doesn't feel better after this person's dead. I also feel like this is a metaphor for Batman as well. Arkham also was doing a lot of weird shit at this point in his life, like routinely walking the corridors of the asylum between 3 and 4 in the morning, hearing laughter from empty cells, covering up the mirrors in his study to make the laughter stop. At this point, he genuinely believes that the house is alive, and that it craves madness. And he also feels that he's lost within this house. Like at this point, I would say that it's fair to state, and I'm not a psychotherapist, but I feel like this guy has just completely gone cuckoo bananas at this point.
The clinical term.
Clinical description.
I'm noticing a Captain Obvious over here. I'm sure everyone else has thought of this already, but I'm noticing the corollary between Amadeus like covering up mirrors and Batman busting the fuck out of one earlier. Like, I'm seeing a lot of ties between the two of these people and how damaged they are.
Right. And how who was it that how the Mad Hatter's like, you're a reflection of us, we're a reflection of you, this kind of thing. There's a lot of mirror imagery going on in here.
This place is a brain that dreams us, and maybe it's your brain.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, fittingly, since this is a story about an asylum, again, there is a lot of like deep psychoanalytical theory going on in here, but it's
God, and also like horrifically losing your family. Like I just put that together. Like shit.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So because covering the mirror is also something you do in mourning, right? Like I know in Judaism we do that. Victorians did it. You cover up your mirrors. And so that could definitely factor in as well. So back to the present day, Batman encounters Maxie Zeus, which is a character that I will fully admit I am not familiar with at all. This is still somebody, I think this is the only time I've ever seen him in a comic that I've read, a DC comic that I've read.
I'm trying to remember that page, but it's
I
whatever
will
the
also
comic is that Kevin's.
Oh, okay. I've not read that. I'm not. Our listeners may already know, but just in case this is inexplicably your first episode, I am far more of a Marvel person than a DC person, which may seem like a total lie if you've been listening for most of this season, as I've done like a ton of DC shit this season. But really, no, genuinely, my experience is mainly with Marvel. So this is a villain that I'm not super familiar with, but he claims to be part man, part woman, and part electricity. These panels are and again, it's like that correlation of that clownfish, right? Like the genderless or the gender fluidity or gender shifting. He doesn't really look to be any particular gender in this, but he's in a very blue, ozone-y looking set of panels, very bright.
Lots of like wire images.
Yeah. And
part man, part woman, part electricity. I'm sorry, I'm just picturing David Bowie.
Right?
Yes. Oh.
If that would actually, if this were a film, that's definitely, I would cast him as
Hello, Batman. I'm Ziggy Stardust.
So he wants Batman to, come and gaze upon the Lord thy God, Maxie Zeus. And he is holding a barrel. The barrel has a lot of like flies and kind of grime on it.
Uh-oh.
And he says that it's, and I'm going to quote this directly here. This is a very strange interlude. Gift of my body, divine, fertile. It shall transform the dry lands of Africa into the perfumed orchards of paradise, and men will worship me anew. For I am Zeus, Lord of ECT, God of electric retribution.
Is there jizz in the barrel? Is there jizz in the barrel? Leia, is there jizz in the barrel?
It's not jizz. It appears, and what I'm guessing, because we don't see what's in the barrel, but I'm going to go ahead and guess, given what he's just described, that it's actually probably his shit. Like he's just been saving shit in a barrel to use as like fertilizer, again, evoking the Egyptian god. Oh God, what is it? I'm blanking now. The god of the rivers.
Oh no, not him.
Basically the one that makes the river go through the cycles of flooding, and renews its Set.
If my historian wife were here, she would, but she's smarter than me, so I got nothing for you.
Yeah. Listeners, please don't get mad at me for suddenly forgetting all my Egyptian mythology. But point being,
Hoppy.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
But that's Google, not me.
Okay. Well, I will trust. It sounds correct. I will trust Google. But yeah, so he's got this barrel full of what appears to be shit, and he's talking about how he's going to essentially use it to fertilize Africa.
Well, then he switches to Christian.
Yeah.
Because he says, eat, drink, this is my body, this is my blood.
Yeah. And he also says the AC/DC altar awaits. Now, this has a dual meaning. Again, because triple if you count the band, which I will not.
Right, because Batman's on the highway to hell.
Yes. Not to be confused.
He is very much back in black all the time.
Nice.
Yay.
And he's about to be thunderstruck.
Oh my God.
Okay, stop now.
I will turn this podcast around.
That's right. And I will help you, Leia.
Josh from my Zoom call.
So, but the AC/DC here in particular that he's talking to, of course, has the obvious meaning of like AC/DC current, but also that's like a kind of a very 80s slang for homosexuality.
Right.
And
okay.
And again, with the Egyptian mythology of these sort of genderless deities, and like again all the psychosexual shit. There's a lot to unpack in here. And again, he looks kind of genderless in this. I use the word he because
traditionally it's a he.
Traditionally he's a he, but in this he could be a they. Batman again does not quite know what to do with this, so he just turns and walks away. It is kind of implied that this Maxie Zeus fella is like attached to the room, attached to the ECT room, like with all the wires and shit that are coming out of him, that he can't leave. So he just kind of stays there, and Batman dips. Batman is like, 2 nuts for me, I'm out.
Well, again, it keeps reinforcing my idea that like they're already in the asylum. This is always his end game. He's never gotten this far to like having next step past that.
Yeah,
because his solutions to things don't work very well.
So when we cut back to Amadeus, and he is at this point clearly not well mentally. He's having difficulties with time. He's having difficulties with, friendship relationships. His friends try to take him to the opera, and he really has no interest in it because he's fucking insane at this point.
Mhm.
Specifically, they take him to Parsifal, which is an opera about the quest for the Holy Grail.
Yeah, which
it links to the scene before. So everything in this kind of links in some way, in a weird fucking way, but in some way.
Yeah. At this point now, he's doing mushrooms. He's eating amanita mushrooms. And not the tasty kind that make you trip balls. There are two very different types of amanita mushrooms. So he's like, I've ingested 3 of the amanita mushrooms. So far, no effect. And then abruptly, I become convinced that the house is alive and trying to communicate with me. He turns and he looks at the aquarium that he has, and he sees 2 clownfish swimming, basically, that make the sign of the Pisces symbol. Pisces is the astrological attribution of the moon card in the tarot pack, the symbol of trial, initiation, death, and rebirth. And so now we set into a series of panels where Amadeus is talking, but we are looking at Batman. So I will try to describe this as best I can. So in the background of this spot, Batman encounters Killer Croc and begins fighting with him. There is no dialogue between them. Killer Croc looks almost like Godzilla. Like he's kind of, but like scary Godzilla, not like cute, 70s Godzilla. Like he looks pretty terrifying. Like he's got big red eyes. He's hulking, huge, scaly, gross.
I love when the comics draw, which they usually do, when they draw Killer Croc really scary.
Yes.
Because that's his whole thing. Like he doesn't have any shtick other than just being like a big freaky monster. And I love when they make him actually horrifying.
Yeah. I will interject and say that I also love that this is one of the things the Batman Arkham Asylum game really took to heart, because when you fight Killer Croc, you don't fight Killer Croc. You're constantly running from Killer Croc.
Yeah, you just your only recourse is to get the fuck out of there. And he hunts you like a monster. Yes. It's so good.
And eventually you just fucking hit him with the Batmobile.
Yep. Again, Batman's endgame solutions for things are real nuanced and good.
So as he's fighting Killer Croc, as Batman is fighting Killer Croc, the captions are all from Amadeus's journal, and he talks about how he, like Parsifal from Wagner's opera, he has to confront the unreason threatens him, that he has to go alone into this dark tower and face the dragon within. And of course, on that panel is Killer Croc. And that he's only afraid of one thing, which is what if he's not strong enough to defeat it? What if he can't beat this madness, basically? And now the drugs are really taking hold, and it's making him feel anxious and afraid. And he is slowly just becoming terrified. As Batman is fighting him, is fighting Killer Croc, he is partially, at least briefly, thrown out a window and manages to catch himself on like one of the outcroppings of this giant Victorian building. And Amadeus is talking about how he's running blindly through the madhouse, and he can't even pray because he has no God. And Batman kind of rises up, pulls himself up in front of basically this not a gargoyle, but like a statue of like an angel, except the angel doesn't quite look like it's a person with wings, but it's shirtless, and it's got like a buzz cut. And
I took it as both an angel, but also a representative of the Roman spear.
Yes. Yeah. It's a very unusual looking angel, for sure. But he is holding a spear, which Batman then takes. And he goes back at Killer Croc. all this is happening in the background with no dialogue. And Amadeus is talking about how, and again, this is a direct quote: "Doors open and close, applauding my flight. Keyholes bleed. A choir of sexually maimed children sings my name over and over again." So yeah, he's not well.
Yeah.
Batman finally manages to stab Killer Croc with this spear, and as he does, Arkham's journal kind of mirrors this and says, "What wounds are these? I am Addis on the pine, Christ on the cedar, Odin on the world ash." So there's a lot of that type of imagery going on in the panels behind. Hung on the windy tree for 9 whole nights, wounded with the spear, dedicated to Odin. And Batman's pulling the spear out of Killer Croc as it breaks. And Arkham's talking about how he peels the tape from the mirror so hard that he breaks his fingernail until he can see himself in the glass. And he says, "I stare into old familiar eyes, mother." So again, those mommy issues coming hard. And he talks about how he fainted at that point when he sees his mother in the mirror in front of him. And he could no longer tell where the dragon of this madness ended and where he began. Which is also a great Radiohead song, by the way. I always got to mention Radiohead. So Batman then finally kind of emerges and finds Dr. Cavendish. Dr. Cavendish has Ruth with like a straight razor. And she's telling him, don't come near him. She's telling Batman, don't come near him. He cut me, just stay back. And it's revealed that the Cavendish is the one who freed the inmates and allowed it to happen. And this was done because Cavendish found this journal. He found Arkham's journal. And Cavendish urges Batman to read it, that he's marked a place for Batman to read. And it's 1920, and it describes basically this experience he had, where his mother was lying, again mentally ill, lying in bed, and is screaming, it's here, it comes every night, I can see it, it's come for me. And it turns out that she is terrified of a bat. It is a bat that has been tormenting her. And so he promises his mother that it won't take you. I won't let it hurt you. Don't be afraid. And it's revealed that he is actually the one who has slit his mother's throat. It is not his mother. His mother has not committed suicide. He has killed her. And he realizes that madness is his birthright. He was born into this, this he says that it's his inheritance, his destiny. And puts her wedding dress back on and wanders the halls again. And he says, and again, I'll directly quote, "I shall contain the presences that roam these rooms and narrow stairways. I shall surround them with bars and walls and electrified fences and pray they never break free. I am the dragon's bride, the son of the widow. Leather wings enfold." And so Cavendish.
If Amadeus Arkham had just fucking gone to therapy instead of doing none of this shit would have happened.
Right. And he was a psychoanalyst before. So that's one of those cases of physician heal thyself, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
he was a 1910s, 1920s psychoanalyst. Which
he's probably giving people loud numbing shit.
Yeah.
That's very true. That's very true.
Let me put this hole in your head. Let the demons escape.
But you've got ghosts in your blood.
You should do cocaine about it.
Cocaine about it, yeah.
That is the realest shit. So Cavendish also appears in these panels to be wearing some kind of lacy gown. I get it's implied that this is the wedding gown in particular.
The wedding gown turned into more of
it's or like a open front shawl or robe or something so Cavendish is completely fucking bonkers, and he's like, you are the bat, you fed this house, you brought it all of its food, you've supplied it with poor crazy people for years, and this is your destiny, essentially, like, this is you are the bat in the story. And Batman, of course, is like, no, I'm just a dude. And
a thing you don't get to say when you've spent billions of dollars making yourself dress up as a bat and have a bat themed car and a cave full of bat technology. Like, I'm just some guy. Like,
no, buddy, you don't get to. Yeah, you don't.
You lost your chance.
Like, I'm just a random dude,
right?
Yeah.
Insert Morgan Freeman staring at him.
So Cavendish goes on to tell Batman that in 1929, Amadeus Arkham attempted to kill a stockbroker, and that's what they finally locked him away for doing. I assume it was probably one of those, what is it, Black Friday issues, but it didn't stop him. And he had read The Golden Bough and studied shamanistic practices, and essentially the earlier meeting with Aleister Crowley had influenced him to such a degree that he decided that in his madness, only ritual magic could contain the bat that haunts this asylum, right? So he scratched a binding spell into the floor of his cell in the asylum that he used to run, that now he's locked up in, with his fingernails. It took him literal years. And it cuts to a set of absolutely beautiful panels that David McKean has put together that just kind of slowly pan out. So you see this old man, the shock of white hair, loose, ill-fitting, kind of inmate asylum clothes, just surrounded by a spiral of written words. They're not decipherable through the art, but it's assumed that they're like magical symbols, and Latin and French and Hebrew and etc. Arkham is talking about how he sees the virtues in madness, because this country knows no law nor any boundary. I pity the poor shades confined to the Euclidean prison that is sanity. All things are possible here, and I am what madness has made me, whole and complete and free at last. And so once this binding spell that he's etching into the wall, or into the floor of his cell, is complete, it's kind of implied that he dies.
His last words are finished. It's
and then he's I'm home where I belong. Is where his journal. And so Cavendish, we cut back now, and Cavendish is talking about how he read it and he couldn't stop thinking about it, and he realized it was his destiny to finish what Arkham had started. He says, I set a trap for the bat. I surrounded the asylum with a circle of salt so we couldn't escape again, and now you're here. And Batman is like, you're sick. You need help.
Yes.
And Cavendish is still holding this razor. And Cavendish is basically like, hey, buddy, if you think I'm sick, look in the fucking mirror. So Cavendish just goes at Batman, just slashing at him with the razor. He actually catches Batman on the arm, and there's blood everywhere. But Batman, being Batman, essentially punches the razor out of his hand. And as he does, Cavendish grabs his throat. The razor goes flying. Ruth is still watching, but she's not doing anything. She's just kind of like, no, don't. Like, it's kind of implied that she's like in shock, which is understandable. Cavendish is screaming at Batman, mommy's boy, mommy's boy, as Ruth goes to pick up the razor. Cavendish is continuing to attack Batman, and Batman is like, yo, bitch, do anything. And she finally manages to kind of get to her feet and get in motion. And as she does, she grabs him by the hair, pulls his head back by his hair as she's holding the razor. And she slits his throat.
Is it the same?
Um,
Maybe I missed this earlier. Is it the same pearl handle razor that
It's implied.
Amadeus's
it
mom?
appears to be, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Because he does talk about how, like, you know, he found the secret room with the journal and there was like other stuff in there, so it's implied
That makes sense. Yeah.
it's probably the same one. And then she kind of realizes like what she's done, and then kind of freaks out, which is understandable. She's like, oh my god.
A quick important point.
Yeah.
There are 2 panels that are that blood-soaked lace.
Yeah.
Because he was wearing the wedding dress vest thing. Which I just really...
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
cool.
It's again bringing it, you know, again, is this a cycle? Is this
right?
You know, is this going to keep happening over and over again? Is this the house? Is this the madness of the house? You know, so it's cool. It's cool in that way.
Well, and the other thing is, I am not an artist. You know, putting together podcasts and writing is about as close as I get to art. But I appreciate how much it must take to create something like what I'm. It is
right.
Holy shit, the detail. I mean,
yeah.
I just got a tattoo, which I will turn on my video and show you guys after we get done recording. But my tattoo artist, the amount of detail that he put into stuff, I'm like, I would never, like, this is why I trust artists, you know? I can give you a basic idea, but when it comes to creation of that idea, I really envy people that have that skill. And Dave McKeon, in something as simple as blood-soaked lace, it is so intricate and so detailed.
Sublime.
Yeah.
Sublime.
It just it blows me away.
Yeah.
It's to see it.
It is. Yeah. I know I've said it like 300 times already, but the art here is incredible. Sometimes I wish that we were like a YouTube channel. That's not like
Right.
that's not a suggestion to start, Joshua.
No, and it won't be, because we will get hit with copyright shit. So
God,
because we can't show original art.
Yeah, but I do wish.
Yeah,
we've done several of these types of books where I've wished desperately that I could just hold up a panel and let people see it as they're listening to the podcast. Like, if it's not a thing, but like this particular book really has just mind-blowing art. But so at this point now, Batman and Ruth are trying to get out of the asylum, and so she's in shock. She's like, holy shit, I just killed somebody. She's kind of uncertain, she's kind of hesitant. And while they're walking, Batman asks her for Two-Face's coin back. And she's worried now that he's going to go back in and quote unquote undo all of her work. And Batman says that he has to show them that he's stronger than them, that he's stronger than this place. And Ruth says, well, that's insane. He says, exactly. Arkham was right. Sometimes it's only madness that makes us what we are, or destiny, perhaps. And he goes back into the asylum. There's a lot of very nebulous kind of panels here showing him getting back into the asylum. And some literally faceless mook is, inside is telling the Joker, you should never have allowed him in here. He's too dangerous. And Joker's like, well, come at me, bro. And Batman has an axe. He essentially lays at the feet of the Joker.
Stop the podcast. I'm pulling the stop the podcast button.
Yep.
What?
Yeah. He is hacked. It's not shown where he gets this axe from.
Right. Yeah, he just has an axe.
It's the bad axe. It's from his utility belt, obviously.
That's right.
Yeah, you just snap it into place.
He pulls out a
little handle,
pill-sized thing, crushes it, and kind of like when you put dinosaurs in water.
It's an inflatable axe,
That's right. Yeah.
So it's he throws this axe down at the Joker's feet, and Batman's like, you're free, you're all free. And the inmates kind of don't know what to do, and so but the Joker doesn't really move. Mad Hatter hands him a straitjacket, and Joker is basically like, oh, we know that already, but what about you? Have you come to to claim your kingly robes, or do you just want us to put you out of your misery like the poor sick creature that you are? So he's holding Two-Face's coin at this point, and Batman says, "Why don't we let Two-Face decide what to do with me?" The Joker is weirdly delighted by this idea because he's fucking nuts. And
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but you told me to do that.
Yep.
Does he actually call him when he says let's let Two-Face decide? Does he say Two-Face or does he say Harvey?
He does. No, he says Two-Face.
Okay.
And in fact, Two-Face is like, me, I can't. I really can't. And that's when Joker's like, Harvey, brilliant, and Batman tosses Two-Face.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if that's an important detail, what name it feels like it.
It is, because earlier
it is.
they were trying to get him to be Harvey Dent again. And that was part of the Doctor's entire thing, is to get him to do more choices and to go away from the Two-Face. Batman is undoing all of that immediately.
Yeah, Batman doesn't give a fuck. Again, he's a job creator, so
yeah. So,
he needs to feed the house, man.
The psychological damage that he inflicts every single day of his life is immense. But imagine the economy.
Right, exactly. Gotham City economy is booming.
Is that a world you want to live in? Like,
I'm just wondering what kind of angry letters we're going to get from a bunch of me people. Being like, you weren't supposed to agree with this. I'm like, but we do.
What's this we shit? I'm out after this episode. I don't have to read any of that crap.
That's right.
You're perfectly safe, Ryan. They'll come
That's
after us. You are merely being exposed to us.
Right.
Like that broad keeps ragging on DC, and all she's done this season is fucking DC.
You deal with video game people, Ryan. I would not trade like shoes with you for anything.
Yeah, I work in the industry that is essentially just a giant Arkham Asylum. So
Why
Actually,
didn't
it's a great
you let
segue.
Tika have her boobs? Yeah.
oh my god.
I told you I only do the music.
Then why didn't you give her boingy boingy sounds?
Oh no. You are banned, sir. You're banned.
Oh, okay. So Batman gives Two-Face's coin back. And Two-Face decides that, if the unmarked face comes up, he's free, and if it's a scarred face, we'll kill him. And he flips the coin. And the coin basically falls slowly through some panels. And Two-Face finally, opens his hand where the coin has fallen. And then he looks up at everybody and says he goes free. The front doors of Arkham, we cut over, the front doors of Arkham are open. Batman comes out, there's police cars, there's ambulances, flashing lights, the whole deal. They're taking Ruth to the ambulance. Cops are going into the asylum. Gordon's standing out there with an umbrella. And as Batman walks out, the Joker says to him, "Parting is such sweet sorrow, dearest. Still, you can't say we didn't show you a good time. Enjoy yourself out there in the asylum. Just don't forget, if it ever gets too tough, there's always a place for you here." And as the policemen start entering, we kind of cut over to Two-Face, who is by himself in what kind of looks like a cafeteria, like dining hall area. And behind him, there's like a house of cards that somebody has built. And so he looks back down at the coin in his hand, and now we can actually see it for the first time. We couldn't see it in the previous panels, but we see in his palm that the scarred face is the one that's showing. So he lied.
Shit.
And he kind of smiles to himself, and puts the coin into his pocket, and turns to regard the house. And the house of cards is actually made of tarot cards, you see now. And he says to really nobody in particular.
He says to the reader.
Yeah. Who cares for you? You're nothing but a pack of cards. And then he knocks over the pack of cards. The final one that falls is the image of the moon. And that's kind of where we close out is the tarot card for the moon. And that is the end of Arkham Asylum.
My gosh. Does anybody does anybody in this call, because I don't know shit about tarot, does anybody know what the moon card is supposed to symbolize or stand for?
It's like rebirth, death, rebirth. It might actually even say in the notes here. Let's see.
Yeah, much to the disappointment of my mother, I don't know any of that stuff. So
I believe it's supposed to be like rebirth and reimagining. I know I saw this in the script, like in the script notes, and I just can't remember where. But it's also, of course, an allusion to, I am the night, I am Batman,
The moon represents your illusions and often comes out when you are projecting fear into your present and your future based on your past experience.
Oh boy, okay, so then it's definitely a heavy-handed metaphor.
Yeah. Well,
the first one in the comic too.
Oh yeah,
right at the end.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had thought that I did not. So I was with you, Ryan.
It's on our show.
With it. But to me, at the end, if I may interject, like my interpretation is the thing that made Arkham's mother, like she said, the bat was the one that hurt her or made her afraid in the home. Well, that was Two-Face making sure the bat didn't stay in Arkham Asylum.
Ooh.
Oh, Jen. That's canon
really
now.
Good.
I'm concerned.
That's fantastic.
That's the correct interpretation.
So, Ryan, normally the question at the end of this is do you feel we explained this well? But you have made that clear throughout. But how would you describe your want to read this comic from before we did this to the end?
Before we did it, like I said, I like Batman. He's definitely like my top 10, top 5 superheroes for sure. So like if you'd put this in front of me and been like, here's a Batman comic you haven't read, I've been like, hell yeah, and would have gone for it for sure. But like I wasn't seeking it out. Just not one of those things like on my mind to add to my kind of roster.
Right.
Now that y'all have walked me through it, and especially as someone who I'm a huge horror fan as well. And so the hearing like how creepy and how
we just become best friends.
Really? I thought that
well
before. I thought
I told you he was cool.
And I only have so many slots.
Ryan, you got to understand, I was hyping them up about you for like weeks because I was like, you guys are gonna love him. You guys are gonna be super best friends. And then it happened, and I was right. So I feel both happy that you're friends and happy that I was right. The important
thing here is that Leia was right.
That's always the important
thing.
But yeah, I'm a huge horror fan. I like Batman quite a lot. So like, and now hearing you all walk me through this, and I my favorite Batman arcs are the ones that kind of actually play with and analyze like his sanity and his relationship to what he's doing and his relationship to his villains and stuff. Which this is just nothing but that shit. So like, I'm gonna like literally grab it like after the call, and especially because I have to see this art. Like Dave McKean's art is just it's so gorgeous. Good. It's gorgeous.
Well,
I saw like one panel.
Yeah, I'm gonna
on
have
Google.
to read it too because I basically Josh was kind of scrolling through, like kind of somewhat following what Leia was laying out. So that's why I was like, oh yeah, sublime. That's awesome. I will be reading this.
Yeah, he's very, very, very good. I really admired his work for years.
Yeah.
I used to have a Dave McKean poster, and it was like I don't know if it was an alternate cover of one of the Sandman books or what the cut was with it, if it was just a poster that was designed for Sandman. I mean, we were talking late 90s here. Who knows? I was a little idiot. I was like 19. But when I moved the poster, we took the poster down from the wall and it tore. It was like brittle and old, and I was so sad, and I've never found its like again. But I would hang his art on every wall I had as an adult if I were able to do so. It's just he's just so good.
Same.
That happened with a Tori Amos like subway poster that I had for like 10 years. And when I finally moved it from where it was, it just kind of disintegrated.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Yeah, I touched it. It just crumbled into dust. I was like, no.
So yeah, one of the other books that I would recommend is there's a comic by Neil Gaiman called Midnight Days. But each of the 6 issues he had a different artist for, 2 of which are Dave McKean and Mike Mignola. Just fantastic. Just on the subject, if you love that kind of artist taking you on a journey.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, for sure. This was way more of like a horror comic. Much the better for it. It's a classic for a reason. But also, now remembering the Batman Arkham Asylum game, there are aspects of this, especially when you start to get into the times that Batman is drugged and goes into the Scarecrow levels. Like there's a lot of that symbolism and a lot of getting into psychoanalyst parts. But I mean, in the game, it's kind of dumbed down for the masses. This is a book that either people will get or people.
Yeah, for sure.
So
what do you? I'm curious what you all, the two of you who've read it, what you think.
So I've actually had I've owned a copy of this for most of my adult life. And originally, I'm not going to lie, I bought it because I love the artist. At that point in time in my life, I really didn't care too deeply about Batman, or DC characters in general. I wasn't super jazzed about them, but I love Dave McKeon. And I happened to be in my local comic shop, and I flipped through very idly, seeing his name on the cover, and was like, holy shit, this artwork, I'm going to read this. And I bought it, I read it, I enjoyed it, I put it on my shelf, and I forgot about it for like a decade. And then it wasn't until we started recording this podcast, actually well over a decade, honestly. I think I bought this in 2004. And so I was like, I'm going to reread this and see if it still stands up. And there was so much as an adult, like coming back and rereading it and being like, oh, wow, there is a lot going on here that I simply did not pick up when I was like a teen. And I think I love it more now.
So for me, okay, at this point, this is the 18th episode of Rec Conversations, and I've recorded 69 episodes of Graphically Novel. So, I mean,
nice.
I've done a lot of comic book podcasts, and I had a thing in the first few seasons of all of them, and I try to do it now, too, of having a physical copy of every book that we've done. But obviously, shelf space, and so I've gone through and I've cleaned out the bookcases several times, done a half price books run and whatever, because not everything that we reviewed I want to keep. Arkham Asylum I had before this, when I was just in my I need a bunch of graphic novels phase. So I've probably had the book, I want to say like at least 4 or 5 years. And when I got it, it was the first time I had read it, because before I started my first podcast, I really wanted an understanding of the history of comics. And Arkham Asylum is on like the list of the top 50 comic books of all time. So I went through that, and that was my first round, is just buying all of those and reading them. But it has survived many like clean outs. I love the art. I love the story. The idea of adding, like Leia said, tarot and spirituality and psychoanalysis and just all of this stuff into a book, it's just not done. Okay, it's not done well that often.
Yeah.
I mean, people try to do it, but there are very few writers that I've found can do it. And really, any book that Grant Morrison works with Dave McKeon, we're going to keep on our shelf.
Yeah.
As long as I live.
That's right. But I mean, a lot of stuff that I've kind of, I had X-Men Schism, for example, is an important storyline in Marvel history when the X-Men split. I had it. I don't have it. I've read it. It's in my memory. And at this point, if I need it, I can get it on digital. Where I read a lot of my comics. If something is still on my shelf, it's a lot to me. And I believe that it kind of belongs in my own, I want to be able to walk over and pull it off of my shelf. And Arkham Asylum is absolutely one of those. Not just because of what it is, but also I'm a huge fan of the entire Batman Arkham series, a video game. And, this is the source material for that.
Yeah. It's so cool as coming in on the reverse direction, where like the Arkham games are some of my definite like modern favorites. Getting to see that source material after the fact and be like, oh yeah, like obviously it's not nearly as dark and psychological as this comic is, because as you say, they got to kind of have some more mass appeal. But I also think just based on your kind of laying this out for me. It's another example, and I know this is the thing. Like lots of your listeners all know this, and you all know this. Is I'm not saying anything novel here, but like it's that cool reminder of like comics can tell really adult, really meaningful stories, even though it's like trying to like wrap my head around the fact that like this is a story about a man who dresses up as a bat and fights a clown and a scarecrow and shit. And like, that's on its face. Like if you break down any superhero thing, it's bonkers that it exists, and that you can tell a story like this, that is like, and now we're going to tell a horror story about like digging into the relationship this man has with his own psyche and with the monsters that he fights. And like, is he a monster too? And, other Batman stories have done that, but it's cool that you can tell a story like this. And I think that's a neat thing about comic books. It's not that other mediums can't do it, but the fact that there's room for like, I'm going to go fucking fight Mr. Freeze in a big ice palace. And then there's also room for this,
Well, and I think it also says something that like Bruce's armor against the world is the bat suit. That is how he's going to deal with his multiple mental instability.
Trauma, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah.
Arkham puts on his mother's wedding dress, which on the surface is like, like that's so kooky. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that parallel it went unnoticed by me as a teen, but
Right.
as an adult, I was like, oh no, like,
Yeah.
No,
It's
rereading
arguably
this-
less crazy. Like
Yes.
he's not running around Gotham City as like, now I'm the bride and I, throw my I attack people with my veil and my fancy shoes and shit. Like it's
Okay, first
arguably
of all,
still
that's
less insane.
That's an amazing superhero.
Yeah.
It would rule, actually. I kind of wish that was real.
That's some Fallout 76 shit.
Yeah, it is.
What
Yeah.
that is.
I don't
because
know.
you have-
Bioshock. More Bioshock.
Well, no, because in Fallout you have the Unstoppables, which are the
Right,
comic book,
okay,
and then
fine.
you have the Mistress of Mysteries, which you actually get to like join her order.
I know, but it's more Bioshock to me. Like in my head, it was more Bioshock. But I have to say that I came to comics as an adult. My childhood experience with comics was like the Arch little thick books you'd get in the grocery store. And then stuff I should. But
Archie comics are a gateway drug. I'm convinced, because that's also how I got into comics.
Absolutely.
Archie and Penthouse are really what I have in
No, Playboy, please. Let's be tasteful, not trashy. Anyway, yes, I know who you are.
Penthouse had better comics.
I disagree. Anyway, but my real introduction to like modern comic was So my introduction was Neil Gaiman, was Dave Mann as the artist, and that, really dark, introspective, layered, nuanced comic, which made me say, okay, this is not the 10-page Superman comic from the grocery.
Right.
And
Yeah.
made
Right.
me
Yeah,
appreciate
this is adult stories for adults. Yeah.
Yes.
I too came back to comics in my adulthood or young adulthood, really like teens, through the Vertigo imprint in general.
God, yes.
Which I was just like, well, wait a minute. Okay, so this isn't just like a Daffy love triangle between the redhead, the blonde, and the brunette. Like this is we got some shit going on here. And I fell in love and went full speed ahead after that. And I've taken periodic breaks from time to time through the course of my life in terms of like keeping up, quote unquote, with the comics. But yeah, Vertigo definitely, if it weren't for the Vertigo imprint existing, I don't think I would have gotten back in. I owe it a lot.
To go back to like what has stayed on my shelf, like just looking at it, I'm like, Arkham Asylum has stayed with things like Identity Crisis, Transmetropolitan, V for Vendetta, Watchmen. Like, I would put this up there with probably like the cream of the crop of comic books, especially with adult comics.
Yeah.
It sits on my shelf directly next to Black Orchid, which is the next step. If you love this, if you love Arkham Asylum, Black Orchid is a thing done by Neil Gaiman, and again, Dave, for a quote unquote DC superhero, but a very different take of the entire universe. Anything that McKeon touches, just a very different take, because his art style lends to telling a different story. We've talked on both shows about how Marvel is the full Crayola box, of color when it comes to motivations and everything else. DC is very three color. DC deals a lot in the good guys win, the bad guys lose. The good guys have good motivations, the bad guys have bad motivations. Sometimes that changes, but the basic rule is, one of our good friends, Kat Essman, has come on these shows a lot, and she says, sometimes I just want to read because I want the bad guy lose and the good guy win. And I know I can get that with.
Yeah.
That's legit.
Yeah. And sometimes I want that too. I can understand that.
Right. But with Marvel, you get a lot more. There are nuances. There are,
With Marvel, you also get a lot more. I feel like this is kind of related. Like, a thing I've wondered about for a long time is that most Marvel heroes are disliked or feared or hated by at least some segment of the society they're protecting.
Yes.
And like the X-Men, obviously, like Spider-Man, like so many of them. And most DC heroes, I feel, are completely beloved by their society. Like,
I mean, like Lex Luthor's motivations, if you really get into them, are that he is a human being that fears for humanity because an alien is watching over them.
I feel like is kind of fair.
No, absolutely. But that's the thing, is that's the interpretation, is that Lex Luthor is a villain because of that. Also because of the steps he takes. But Lex Luthor is a villain due to that motivation.
Yeah.
Whereas in Marvel, he might even be an anti-hero because he'd be like, but I can't necessarily blame the regular humans that are like, we need to eliminate mutants because they're going to eventually cause our extinction. I mean, Yes, that is the way that you deal with the next step in evolution. It is a very human reaction. So who are you rooting for?
Right. Totally. 100%.
Exactly. And as a kid, I used to, having preteen boy motivations. I loved, Marvel stuff and DC stuff equally, but it would always make me sad. I was like, man, why can't people see that Spider-Man's a good guy and he's like helping people? And why can't people see that the X-Men are just people who were born this way? And like, I would find myself wishing that Marvel heroes got, to be in the spot that Superman is, where, most regular citizens aren't like, fuck Superman. Like, they're into him.
Right.
And now as an adult, I kind of much prefer that, that nuance of like watching a person struggle to be a hero, and save people, even if a bunch of the people they're saving like don't fucking want them to, or hate their guts, or would get rid of them if they could.
Well,
and to me, this comic kind of
it's because of the fake media run by J. Jonah Jameson.
It's
who
J.
is a
Jonah
real
Jameson's
patriot.
One American News Network led by J. Jonah Jameson. Fuck, man. Their decision, real brief aside, in the Spider-Man games to make him like an Alex Jones
oh my
podcast.
God,
it was
so great,
so perfect. Like,
it was so good.
But yeah, I feel like this comic gave me a little bit of that. Not quite in the same way. It wasn't like the city hating Batman, but like you see all the ways Batman kind of hates himself, and the ways that he's he's the one struggling with why he's doing this and how he's reacting to things.
Right,
not the citizenry of Gotham City.
Perhaps Batman hasn't processed his trauma in an appropriate way, and he's just now like, wait a minute, maybe this isn't healthy. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, wearing a belt with like 3 grappling hooks and a bunch of boomerangs on it. And like only then are you like, wait a minute.
Like going to a singles mixer and just being like, oh, you also lost your parents? Where's your costume?
Yeah.
So in 2002, there was a storyline called Bruce Wayne Fugitive that directly goes into Bruce Wayne Murderer. But
Whoa.
It was Bruce Wayne basically is arrested for murder out of nowhere and put in a cell. And there are entire issues where it is him talking to Batman. Yeah, right?
Makes sense to me.
But that is one of the best examples I've ever seen of that kind of how fucked up Bruce is. That, somebody just figured out, Bruce Wayne has to have something to do with Batman, so arrest him. And it was an interesting run. But if you like that kind of thing, it's something to look.
Yeah, I will dig into that because that is my kind of thing.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Do you have any plugs, any upcoming stuff that you want people to know? Keep in mind this will air sometime in 2022.
Sure. Yeah. One of the pretty much the only game I'm working on that I can talk about right now is a game called Wizard with a Gun. That is kind of like a survival co-op game set in a like magical apocalypse universe where the whole conceit is about kind of crafting spells, but your spells take the form of like magic bullets that you fire. So you shoot a fireball out of your pistol, or you shoot a bunch of teleport spells out of your SMG or whatever. And that's not out, but you could check out the trailer. If you search it on YouTube, you'll find it. I'm really happy with the music I wrote for that.
It slaps. It totally slaps.
Thank you so much. My singer for that did an incredible job. Has this crazy gravelly voice that I'm pretty sure I'm ruining their throat by making them do this, but they're doing a great job. And then otherwise, you can I'm pretty Googleable. If you want to find any of my other games or music, if you just type my name in, you'll see my big dumb head will come up right away. Thickest glasses in the biz.
Do this. You should do this. Go listen to his music. It's really good. I'm not saying that because he's my friend. I'm saying that because it is genuinely awesome.
Well, and I will say that in this house, Jen, I want to play all the indie in the world.
Yes, I am.
Person, and so we have Where the Water Tastes Like Wine on our list to play now, because
that's awesome. I hope you dig it.
And in fact, it might be just after we get done recording, because now that we've met you and know that you are a fantastic human being.
Crank the volume on that game. It is so good. It is so good. I listened to it.
Well,
in my car.
I just brought it up, and there's a skeleton playing a guitar, which is Jen's aesthetic 1,000%.
I was going to say, I mean, it has.
If you like skeletons, everything. You're going to like this game.
It has everything. It's got skeletons. It's got banging music. It's got travel. It's got stories. It's like somebody designed a game specifically for me, about me.
Right. Ryan, to give you an idea, 2 years ago for her birthday, I ordered Jen a rat skeleton from China.
Yes. Oh my God. I love it so much. Well, you saw my fake trophy wall behind us when we started.
Yes.
That's awesome. I was really staring at that.
It's all like there's some like quilted, there's resin, there's felted,
and then there's a real cicada with its wings extended, dipped in bronze.
Yes.
In a shadow box. But
scary.
Yeah. we are the Addams Family house. And in fact, for Halloween every year, we dress as Gomez and Morticia, sit out on our front porch drinking wine and give candy and comics to kids.
That's extremely good. Whoa, I love it. What a great addition to my favorite holiday. How many of the little kids have any fucking idea who you are, though?
Well, I am the neighborhood witch.
Halloween's the only time that children come into our yard, because we really
that's how we like it
all year.
It is.
Yeah,
it's true.
But so Ryan, we will definitely have you back if we can.
I would love that.
And if there are any comic book properties like media that comes up that you are interested in, we'd love to have you on Graphically Novel as well. Any shows or movies that are based on comic we can have you on would be great.
Oh no, given that I assume listeners of this show are also fine with it, but like I'm fully aware that like the MCU-ification of the entire fucking world is a thing that a lot of people are tired of, and God, not another Marvel movie. Like I'm fucking here for all of this shit.
I know. I'm right there with you. I went to Eternals in the theater, man, and I was like, you know what? No matter what this ends up being, and it was a background thing, and I have a whole story about how when the Fantastic Four show up in the MCU, you needed Eternals to cross that gap to explain the shit that fucking the Fantastic Four deal with all the time. So anyway.
So I guess what I'm saying is there's when you say like if there's any TV or movie properties too or whatever, it's like the all of them, dog. Like
I'll reach out to you. That's fantastic.
No, seriously, we are best friends.
100%.
Yes.
I'm so happy this happened.
We will find you. So everyone else, thank you for tuning in to Rhett Conversations. Please tune in 2 weeks when we will be doing Marvel 1602, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah.
Because it is Neil Gaiman reimagining the Marvel universe in the year 2 in modern history. It is so good. And I know we've done noir already this season, and I loved doing noir, but 1602 is where it's at because I also get to gush about. So until then, take it away, Vandello.
A little wreck conversation, some deep reactions, please. All this comics narration ain't me. A little more talk, a lot less read. A little fight, baby, is what I need. Close the trade, open up your brains. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me. Vandello 2021.